There comes a quiet hour in a man's life, not always marked by tragedy or fanfare, when something inside him simply stops. Not with a crash, not with a scream, but like a candle giving its final flicker in a forgotten hallway. He wakes up, he shaves, he drives, he smiles for the kids, he makes the meetings. But behind the rituals of daily life, he knows something is gone. Not stolen, not murdered, just misplaced. The fire that once burned has cooled into ash. He is not yet old, but he is no longer young. He is not unhappy, but he is no longer alive. And when he stares at the mirror too long, he doesn't see a man staring back. He sees a ghost, a functioning, smiling, respectable ghost. Nietzsche warned us of this. He didn't speak to men at their peak. He spoke to men drifting into irrelevance. To those who once dreamed, who once raged, who once burned, but now spend their days managing decline. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the overman, he wrote. But most men never finish the crossing. They get stuck in the middle, between instinct and transcendence, between youth and wisdom, between chaos and mastery, and somewhere in that stretch, something begins to rot. Not physically, spiritually. The hunger is gone. The laughter is mechanical. The questions stop. The man who once looked at the stars now checks stock prices. The man who once longed to create now longs for comfort. The man who said, "I will change the world," now says, "I just want peace." And Nietzsche, who saw through every polite lie society tells men, would look at him and ask, "At what point did you trade your quest for convenience?"
The tragedy isn't that the man failed. The tragedy is that he stopped trying. He gave up the mountain because the hill was easier. He abandoned the hero's path because the hallway had better lighting. And this deadness, it's not depression in the clinical sense. It's not sadness. It's not even fatigue. It's numbness. It's standing in a room full of everything you once wanted and realizing it doesn't speak to your soul. The car is nicer, the house is bigger, the bank account is healthier, but inside, emptiness. Because the man was built for conquest, not consumption. Built to overcome, not to accumulate. And the modern world, in its endless seduction of safety, tells him the lie that when a man reaches 40, he should be settled. Nietzsche would spit on that word. Settled? For what? Settled where? Into what? If a man has truly settled by 40, then he has already buried the best parts of himself under routine. This isn't an attack on stability. It's a call to remember what it's for. A fortress is not a grave, it's a launching pad. But men, once they've built their fortress, family, career, home, often mistake it for a final resting place. They think the goal was always just to survive. But Nietzsche said survival is for animals. The real man was built for transformation, for becoming, for the eternal why. But in the silence that creeps into the second half of life, few ask it. They just comply. They become shadows of who they might have been, applauded by a society that rewards predictability over purpose. And yet, in the quiet moments, the walk to the car, the moment before sleep, the pause in conversation, something inside them whispers, "This isn't it." That whisper is the last breath of a forgotten quest.
So what happened? Why does a man who once felt alive now feel like he's performing someone else's role? Because somewhere along the way, he stopped listening to pain. Pain is not the enemy. It is the compass. It is the call of the undiscovered self. But most men numb it with comfort, with alcohol, with busyness, with polite distractions, because to feel pain again would be to admit that something is still unfulfilled, that there is a hunger still unsatisfied, that the story is not done. And that terrifies him, because that would mean waking up again, risking again, failing again. And he's too tired, too dignified, too respected to fall on his face at this stage of life. So instead, he dies slowly, invisibly, with a smile. Nietzsche saw this rot as the real disease of modernity. Not war, not poverty, but spiritual complacency. Men walking corpses, dressed in suits, applauded for their numbness. And so the question isn't why men over 40 feel dead inside. The question is why they think they shouldn't. Why they think the path of a man ends in comfort. Why they think passion is a young man's game. Nietzsche would scream into the void, "No! Passion is for any man with a soul still intact. Fire belongs to the eternal, and the fire does not burn because of age, it burns because of direction. A man without a quest, without a burden to lift, without a dragon to slay, will always rot, even if he smiles at every barbecue. Because the soul doesn't care how well you're doing in the world's eyes. It only asks one thing: are you still becoming?"
But to become, truly become, is to suffer. And that's where the modern man recoils, because everything around him says the opposite. Advertisements whisper, "You deserve ease." Therapists say, "Be kind to yourself." Society suggests, "You've done enough." But Nietzsche never promised peace. He promised becoming. And becoming is violent, not in blood, but in identity. It tears away the false skin. It breaks the mirrors you've been admiring yourself in. It drags you into the cave where your real self is shackled and demands that you confront it. That's why men avoid the second quest, because it's not about building anymore, it's about burning, about sacrificing the man you've become for the man you could be. And that means loss of comfort, of certainty, of praise, the very things you spent decades earning. But Nietzsche's voice is clear as iron. If you won't destroy the shell, you can't find the soul. And most men don't want that deal. They want the illusion of depth without the descent. They want to be admired for wisdom without paying the price of solitude. They want to be called brave without risking anything real. They post quotes about discipline but live in fear of discomfort. They share stoic mantras but can't sit in silence. They preach sacrifice but protect their ego like it's sacred. And when life finally asks them to bleed for something deeper, something beyond their job title or reputation, they panic because they've forgotten how. Because they've gone too soft, too numb, too praised. Praise is the real poison. It paralyzes a man in the name of approval. And Nietzsche warned us, when a man seeks applause, he becomes a clown. He performs instead of transforms. He entertains instead of endures. That's why men in their 40s look alive but feel dead. Because they've been trained to perform life, not live it. They've been told the goal is to retire with dignity, to be liked, to be respected. But respected by whom? A crowd that fears risk? A world that celebrates sameness? A system that calls you valuable only when you're useful and forgets you when you're not? That's not respect, that's performance. And deep down, the soul knows the difference. Which is why even after the promotion, even after the vacation, even after the admiration of peers and family, there is still that moment, that question, that silence. Is this it?
Nietzsche would argue that most men never actually live. They just delay dying. They buy time. They accumulate distractions. They build lives that look impressive from the outside, but are hollow at the core. And they do it because becoming yourself, fully, authentically, violently, is terrifying. It means risking your identity. It means saying goodbye to who you think you are. It means becoming a stranger to yourself long enough to evolve. That's the real abyss. Not death, but change. And Nietzsche tells us, if you stare into that abyss long enough, it stares back. It dares you to jump, to cross the rope, to walk the edge between who you were who you must become. But the tragedy is this: most men never jump. They stand at the edge year after year, convincing themselves that things are fine, that they're too busy, that they've got responsibilities, that now isn't the time. But the abyss waits, and it grows darker with every year wasted, and that darkness leaks into their soul, into their eyes, into their marriages, their friendships, their self-worth, until one day, even they can't deny it. They're not men anymore. They're echoes of their younger selves, dressed in older skin, still quoting bold ideas, still pretending to be strong, but emptied of quest, emptied of courage. And yet, here is the hope, brutal and beautiful. The fire isn't gone, it's buried beneath the layers of performance, comfort, approval, and fear. Nietzsche didn't believe in permanent death of the soul. He believed in resurrection through will, the will to power, not over others, but over self, over sloth, over doubt, over the decay of a passive life. That will is still there, in you, if you dare to use it, if you're willing to lose everything you thought mattered in order to find what actually does. But no one will cheer you for it. No one will applaud the man who walks away from the banquet table and chooses the mountain. You will be called selfish, mad, irresponsible. But that's the price of transformation. You must be willing to be misunderstood completely, violently, if you are to become more than a man. You must be willing to frighten those who love your comfort more than your truth. Because the second half of life is not for building a brand. It's for shedding it. It's not for proving your worth. It's for discovering it. And you cannot discover it until everything you thought was valuable begins to fall apart. That's the gift of the abyss. It strips you until all that's left is the truth. And the truth is not soft. The truth is not easy. The truth is that you have one life, one shot, one breath. And if you reach the end with money but no meaning, with smiles but no scars, with applause but no soul, you did not live. You survived, and you were never meant to survive. You were meant to transcend.
The world will not tell you this. The world will hand you medals for mediocrity. It will dress your cage in gold and call you a success. It will say, look at all you've built. Look how loved you are. Look how balanced your life is. But Nietzsche would laugh, not cruelly, but with the pity of a man who's seen behind the curtain. He would say, this is not balance. This is sedation. This is the coma of the spirit pretending to be peace, and you know it. You feel it every time you lie awake at night, haunted by a version of yourself you never became. He appears in your mind like a ghost, fierce, lean, focused. He doesn't smile much, but he's real. He's raw. He's the man you could have been, had you not settled, had you not silenced the urge to burn. He doesn't blame you. He just waits. And every year you ignore him, he grows stronger, not in presence, but in absence. And that absence becomes unbearable. This is why Nietzsche said, he who has a why can bear almost any how. But most men after 40 no longer have a why. They have schedules. They have habits. They have goals, yes, but no inner fire, no sacred cause, no burden heavy enough to make them forget themselves and remember their mission. So they substitute pleasure for purpose, routine for rebellion, acceptance for authenticity. But the soul cannot be tricked. It was not designed to simply repeat tasks until death. It was forged for battle, for meaning, for self-overcoming. And when you take that away, when you replace it with comfort and applause, the soul begins to rot. Quietly, tragically.
There is only one cure: to begin again, to risk looking foolish, to wake up tomorrow and admit the truth that you are not done, that your best self is not behind you, that your fire is not some relic of youth, but a weapon meant to be reignited. And yes, it will cost you. People will not understand. Your peers will call you restless. Your family may call you distant. But you are not distant. You are awake. You are, finally, alive.
And if that aliveness offends those who have chosen the grave of predictability, so be it. They can keep their peace. You have chosen war, not against others, against the part of you that accepted death before dying. Because Nietzsche's point was never just about philosophy. It was about awakening, about the brutal, sacred work of turning your life from a quiet surrender into a violent resurrection. He didn't speak to the masses. He spoke to the few, the restless, the aching, the haunted, the men who look around at their well-ordered lives and whisper, "This is not it. There's more." And there is, but you must become dangerous again. Not reckless, dangerous. A threat to the dullness, a challenge to the complacency, a walking reminder that one man on fire is worth more than 1,000 comfortably numb. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the perfect time. Those are lies, designed to keep you tame. There will never be a perfect time. There will only be now. And either you reclaim your life now, or you slowly vanish into the myth of who you were supposed to be. Nietzsche didn't write to soothe. He wrote to provoke, to disturb, to awaken the part of you buried under politeness and professionalism. He wrote for the man who dares, even at 40, even at 50, even at 70, to begin again. Not because he is broken, but because he refuses to stay buried. He wrote for you. So if you feel dead inside, don't panic. That feeling is not your end. It's your beginning. It's the sound of your former self collapsing under the weight of what you've outgrown. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's lonely. But it's sacred. Because that ache is the crack in the shell. And through that crack, the real man is trying to emerge. Do not silence him. Do not numb him. Let him scream. Let him claw. Let him rise. And do not look back. The world may not celebrate you. It may never understand. But it will never forget you. Because the man who chooses to rise again, not at 20, but at the edge of comfort and collapse, he is a rare thing. He is no longer just a man. He is becoming. And becoming is immortality.